So you're doing 1A, 1B, number 2, and then stop as we use the quiz as a review of the chapter. And then again, though, if you're watching at home, you're going to need to pause. Okay, so hopefully the top, no problem. You got to know look, I only require you to know a couple of the identities, right? So, I mean, come on. So sine squared A plus cosine squared A equals 1. And again, you should be familiar with the other two forms of that Pythagorean identity. I'm frozen, huh? So sine squared A plus cosine squared A equals 1. And then the second one, the tangent of x is the sine over the cosine. Again, if you forget, just think about what the tangent is. Opposite over adjacent. The opposite is the top of the sine, and the adjacent is the top of the cosine. Keep it straight there. So the cotangent would be the cosine divided by the sine, right? Okay, and then you should have looked at number 2 and said, I'm going to use the law of sines. Definitely the easiest one to use. C over sine of 26 equals 15 over sine of 123, and you get 7.8. Any questions on any of those? How many went 3 for 3? Okay, that's bad, because that's so simple. So let me ask you this: how many got number 2 correct? So that many of you don't know the 2 identities I gave you. I gave you 2, and you don't even know the 2. All right, well, shame on you. All right, go ahead and try number 3. Cosines. So hopefully you decide law of cosines on this one. Remember, x squared equals the other 2 sides squared minus 2 times the one side times the other side times the cosine of the angle that goes with x. Therefore, x is going to be the square root, and you end up with 10.2. How many got that correct? Okay, not very many, and that's the second main thing we learned in the chapter. Law of sines, law of cosines, and solving law of cosines. Listen, solving law of cosines for a side is the easier of the 2 things. So if it's punching it into your calculator that's an issue, you got to practice to get that figured out. Use odd problems from this section in the book. Use odd problems from the chapter review. By the way, some of you should be doing the chapter review over the topics we've covered to try to get yourself ready. All right, any questions on that one? Anybody want me to explain anything there? Okay, number 4. Go ahead and solve 4. Okay, this one you should be done by now. If you're not completely understanding, because this is straightforward. Law of sines. Sine h over 30 equals the sine of 111 over 42. It's a pretty quick calculation on this one. Move the 30 to the other side. Just don't forget this 30 is times the sine of 111. Don't do 111 times 30 and then take the sine. You're going to be in trouble. So it's 30 times the sine of 111 divided by 42, and you should have gotten 41.8 degrees. How many got that one correct? Okay. So far we did law of sines for both a side and for an angle, and law of cosines for a side. All right, then you can get problems like this where we just tell you values. Could ask you to solve the whole triangle, or I could ask you to solve for something. So number 5, I ask you to solve for n. So go ahead and do 5. And if you got time and you want to start 6, go ahead. And so hopefully you drew the triangle. Hopefully then you decided, what am I going to use? You said, oh, I can't use law of cosines. Oh, I can get that third angle because 3 angles of a triangle is 180. Now I can use law of sines. N over sine of 34 equals 8.2 over sine of 46. 6.4. Anybody else get that? Okay. So that was thought process. About half of you did not get that. These are the nuts and bolts of this chapter. You got to be able to do law of sines and law of cosines. By the way, you guys did fine with these right after we did them. Can I just be frank with you? That's your problem. You don't review and you don't remember. And when you get a couple days down the road, you don't remember any more things that you were fine in. You guys were fine on these on the first quiz. Not an issue. And now you're missing them. Okay, so go ahead and do 6. All right, so again, I don't know if you had enough time there. Should have drawn yourself a triangle to help you think. Angles always go opposite their sides. Should have said I need to use the law of cosines. This time I got to solve for the angle though. So d squared equals c squared plus f squared minus 2cf cosine of d. Look, this always matches the angle. These are always the other two. That's every time. Remember, you're solving for an angle, so you're doing cosine the -1. You're also doing some math. You got to add the opposites to both sides, then you got to divide by -2cf, and all that's cosine the -1. Should have gotten 102.6. Anybody get that? Okay. Rest of you perhaps didn't have enough time, but time's going to be an issue. Look, if you don't know what you're doing, then obviously it's going to be an issue. So you got to know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, it doesn't take as long. So be careful. Any questions on that one? So again, make sure you know how to punch this into your calculator, and make sure you know how to find angles using the law of cosines. All right, so we've done now all of them. All right, so now you get to number 7. Go ahead and find the values of this trig equation from 0 to 360. All right, again, I might be stopping you a little early, but hopefully the equation part's no problem. Move the 5, move the 9, sign the -1 button. 12.8, everybody should have. Shouldn't be an issue getting the first value. Again, how are you going to get that second? Okay, I showed you both ways. Do you do both ways? No. Do the way that you can handle, I showed you both. So linear method, you're 12.8. Now I'm 12.8 away from 180. Or you go with the radial method, I'm 12.8, where else is sign positive, quad 2, 12.8 reference angle, 180 minus 12.8, 167.2. How many got that correct? Okay, good. Good. So, again, methodology, and I hope you did something like this on your paper, right? To figure out what that second angle is going to be. All right, see if you can do number 8. Another trig equation. All solutions. All solutions. Okay, I'm going to pause you so I can get to the last couple things here. So hopefully you decided that the period's 120. You add it like terms. 4 of them and a -7 of them is a -3 of them. Move the -3 to the other side. Cosine the -1 of -1/3 is 109.47, etc. Divide that by 3, you get 36.5 on the round off. So 36.5 plus 120n are all the values of that one. What's the other angle? Well, again, we got a period of 120. Halfway is 60, 23.5 reference angle. Right? Cosine's negative in 2 and 3. So this is going to be 60 plus the 23.5. And then, again, those of you that know what's going on, you can do 90 minus the 36.5. Okay, and save worrying about the reference angle. So 83.5 and then 120n. Again, you're wasting your time if you're writing all this stuff down. You have it in your notes. We've done problems like this before. You should just be listening to the explanation. Okay, we don't have time to do 9, but you should look at this and say, oh, this thing is quadratic. The sign is squared. And you should say to yourself, I can solve this by taking the square root of both sides. So let me move the 25. Let me take the square root of both sides, and let's not forget the plus minus. Go ahead then and figure out the values to see which one of those four is an actual value. I would tell you this right off the bat. This definitely is not an answer. Why isn't it? Because I asked you to give them from 0 to 360. So, but some people would have fallen into that trap and put that as the answer. All right. So anyhow, do you remember how to do problems like this, number 10? I hope you do, because you're going to have to remember Chapter 10 stuff. It's trig, and it carries over. You should still know how to do right triangle trig. This one, you've got to find the angle, right? So you're going to use your -1 button. And again, remember, it's a cotangent. So this is what you're thinking. The tangent of A is 1 over the cotangent of A. And what is the cotangent? -3.4444. So it's tangent to -1 button of 1 divided by -3.4444. Just want to refresh your memory on that. Don't forget how to do those things. Again, there's a decent amount of review from last test. Last one, can you prove that? So we'll spend the last part of time here. Can you prove that negative cosine x plus cosine squared x minus 1 divided by cosine x equals negative secant x? See what you can do in the next couple minutes. All right, time's about gone, so look, if you factor out a -1 out of the top, many of you probably wouldn't do this, but if you would, you end up with that, which is nice because that's a sine squared. But most of you probably wouldn't think of that, so I won't go that route. However, if I do take this and change it into 1 minus the sine squared x, right? I gave you those 3 forms of the Pythagorean one. That's pretty valuable there. That's going to help me out, and that's going to get me somewhere. And then, as I try to help you guys with, we've got 2 terms. We got to make them 1. Therefore, we got to add fractions. Therefore, I need a common denominator, so I better multiply the bottom by cosine x. Whatever I do the bottom, do the same thing at the top. Here's where I'm at right now. Negative cosine squared x plus, and I shouldn't do plus, but I already did, minus sine squared x. By the way, 1 minus 1 is 0, all over cosine of x. Now if you factor out a 1, a -1, you get cosine squared x minus sine squared plus sine squared x. And what is the cosine squared x plus the sine squared x? It is 1. Where do you end up with? -1 over the cosine of x, which happens to be negative the secant of x. All right, I've only given you 2 identities to work with, so that's always what you're looking for, and that's the concept. All right, so again, we're going to put the test off till Thursday. We're going to get into chapter 12 tomorrow, so 12.1 tomorrow, test on Thursday.